I think we overvalue talent and undervalue presence. The best thing you can do is to have a marriage that people want.
Welcome to the Grace Marriage Podcast. I'm Brad Rhoads.
And I'm Marilyn Rhoads. We're here to help you build a marriage that's stronger, more connected, and full of grace.
I'm Rick Dayton, joining Brad and Marilyn as we bring you weekly conversations designed to inspire and equip you to live intentionally in your marriage.
We'll share practical tips, powerful stories, and strategies to help you and your spouse grow closer and thrive together.
So whether you're just starting out or have been married for years, there's always room to grow. Let's do this together. This is the Grace Marriage Podcast.
This is Brad Rhoads at the Grace Marriage Podcast, and I have a privilege today of one of my best friends being on the podcast. We have known each other for years. He's a musician, he's a recorder, he's a worship leader, he's a friend, and we've had a long road together in marriage ministry as well. Welcome to the podcast, Brandon Swanner.
So good to be here, man. Thanks for letting me slide in.
Well, tell everybody, who is Brandon Swanner?
Yeah, I've been a believer since 8 years old. I won't give you all the details of the story. Grew up in church, parents that were figuring out their faith in our home. So I wasn't raised in a traditional Christian home, but that beginning of my story led me to a place where I was interested in ministry, began to serve the church because grew up in Eastern Kentucky around Southern gospel music, and my parents would travel in a band that led and sang in different places all over the state at every homecoming you could imagine. And so God kind of planted a love for music in the church in my heart at an early age. And so I began to lead the church in music, where I met my wife, and now we do that together. I've served in vocational ministry over 20 years and have recorded and released a few worship songs along the way, and father of 5. And we've been married now going on 22 years.
Well, Brandon was one of the first few pastors in my local church. Weren't you and Jameis the first 2 pastors?
We were the first 2. We planted, replanted Pleasant Valley in 2006, and I came on right at the beginning of 2007. So we were young, 24-year-olds, just jumping in the thick of it. Pretty ignorantly, but God was really kind. Yeah.
Well, if he's strong in our weakness, I guess he's wise in our ignorance. So there you go. Well, Brandon, I remember, I started going to Pleasant Valley, and then for some reason you guys decided you wanted to add me as one of the pastor elders. And I remember you guys coming to my house to ask me to be pastor elder. And I remember your wife was there, James's wife was there. I don't remember anybody else was there or not, but I remember Tara and Annie just looking really flat. I mean, just like a flat affect. They didn't look happy. And then one of them said, Brad, I hope you accept and come on so you can help our husbands. And I remember doing this. I said, if you want me to come on and do what they're doing, the answer is no. If you want me to get them to help you put the kids to bed and not eat chicken fingers with the church on a Tuesday night or Wednesday night, I said, you got your guy. So, start out by kind of talking about how the pressures of work, the pressures of ministry can unintentionally impact a good-willed person's marriage.
Yeah, well, you've heard it said that ministry is a place where people go to work themselves to death, or sometimes on the opposite end of the spectrum, they'll go to hide, to die or hide. And Jameis and I were both raised in pretty high work ethic homes where there's high expectations, where we watched our parents work themselves, and sometimes, in some cases, the expense of their family. So I was just doing what I had learned, at home, and working long hours, making sure I was above reproach with every person I met, and when you're in a church plant situation, you're everything to the church at that point. You're all of the positions. And so in a thriving church, we were growing really, really fast. There was a lot to do, and very few people congratulating you on your date night, and lots of people congratulating you on the good thing you did in front of the church on that last Sunday. So it's just kind of inclines itself in that direction really easily.
Yeah, you had both hats. You're the youth pastor and the worship pastor. So basically, you led our youth and our worship. And but you're right in church, but not only in church, in business. You work too many hours. You get a lot done. You do this. You're applauded, but nobody's really pushing you toward your wife. I mean, nobody works and, hey, why don't you just go home and chill with Tara? Why don't you just go on a date? Why don't you just go hang on the couch and just connect with your bride? So there's pressures in society that pull you a lot of directions, but there's not many pressures that push you toward one another. Would you agree with that?
I would. I would say with a few small exceptions. Can I share a story of one individual who was very much not that at our church?
I would love it.
Bob Childers. You remember Bob?
Oh, yeah.
Our church has a countdown. We're about to start the service, and Tara would very regularly show up pretty late to church. And she pulled up one day in the parking lot, and we had 4 children at this time, 3 or 4. I can't remember exactly when this happened in the timeline. So she's getting all these car seats out of our van in the front parking lot. Bob Childers comes and gets me off the stage with like 30 seconds left before we start the service and says, "Your wife is walking alone into the church and she has all your children. Go be a man and go get your kids." And so I left the stage. I put my guitar down. I went and helped Tara come into the church, set her down, and we started a few minutes late. And, those kinds of things, God would sprinkle throughout Pleasant Valley to help our values to line up in the right way from time to time. So it wasn't like there was no encouragement. Obviously, you're an important part of our story, you and Marilyn. And so God gave us some good friends along the way. But I will say, if it weren't for those friends, it would be disastrous. And
well, if you're going to neglect something, don't neglect your wife or marriage, because if that falls apart, everything falls apart. I talked to a guy today who is now divorced, and his life is just a complex disaster. And he said, "Man, I wish I'd have been more proactive in marriage. I had no clue the pain that I could ever go through." So it's just, so one, it's better be a couple minutes late to start worship at the church than to let your wife do everything on her own, come into church. And also be that Bob Childers. So if you're listening to this podcast, if you're into that podcast, be the guy. Scripture says, "Let marriage be held in honor among all." So be the guy that encourages people to hold marriage in honor. So when Bob did that, he was holding marriage in honor. Hey, Brandon, it's more important for you to take care of your wife and be a good husband than it is to start right on time. But for some reason, that doesn't land on our mind unless somebody puts it there.
sure. And that's been, in those little moments stick with you. It matters more than you think when someone encourages you or corrects you in love. Those things stick. Those words are just kind of echoing in there in the system all the time. And I come back to those things. I come back to your table conversation where you were like, "I don't want my wife to look like your wife, so I'm not going to sign up for what you guys are doing." That stuck, especially from somebody you care about and you respect when they say that. And so, obviously do that in a discerning, loving, kind way at the right time and the right moments. But, don't underestimate what your voice can do for somebody else who's, you can see it. You can see it in their culture. You can see it in their face. You see it in their family when they're struggling. We need people to call us out.
Well, I'm kind of, me, I'm kind of frugal, and our air conditioner wasn't working at full speed. So, it wasn't totally broken, but we were hovering between 76 and 78, which for me is fine. It's certainly not Marilyn's preference. And Bill Barron pulled me aside and said, "You idiot, would you quit just sweating out your wife and making her miserable being a terrible husband? Fix your air conditioner." I'm like, "Oh, I probably ought to fix the air conditioner." But, I think if we were more aggressive shepherds of one another, if wounds from a friend can be trusted, if we as husbands would band together and be more aggressive to help each other love our spouses more, and those of the faith, I don't think it bothers them that much, because it's not like we want to be bad husbands. I want to be exemplary to Marilyn. So if you saw something and kind of smacked me around a little bit about it, I'd want that, because I want to do right. Do you have any thoughts on that, B?
Yeah. I mean, the thing that all those people that we've mentioned have in common is they have great marriages. If somebody who's struggling in their own family is coming up and telling me how to do this, it doesn't land the same. And so,
yeah,
I think it's a permission you give people who are walking the path, who are doing the hard work, and who are building a culture. We need them to be prophetic in the lives of other people. We need to notice, and to be around people to care. As an artist, a big part of my job is to notice. I need to have eyes that see things that are beautiful or that are ugly or that are hard to perceive, and then put word and lyric to it, to draw attention to things that are often, missed. And we can be artists in the church in this way too, like draw attention to things that sometimes go unnoticed, bring it to the forefront beautifully, winsomely. But the best thing you can do is to have a marriage that people want, so that people will listen to you. Because
your marriage is your credibility piece. I mean, frankly, if you don't have a good marriage, an exemplary marriage, you just lose credibility. I mean, because you see a woman that's well loved and a husband that's a credibility giver. I remember one time at Grace Marriage, I had somebody that wanted to give me some good advice about how to do our ministry better, and some ideas on curriculum and things like that. And I knew their marriage. I was like, I listened, but I didn't pay a lick of attention. I was like, if I listen to you and it turns out like it's turning out for you, I think I'll pass on the counsel, so whatever you're telling me doesn't seem to be working, but if that same person had a vibrant wife that felt well loved, that I saw adoring him, and I'd be like, dude, bring it on. I want to hear it, so if somebody's a terrible musician, you don't want their advice on how to lead worship, do you?
And that's most of the people who are giving the advice.
Yeah, it's true. It's funny. Why is it that people are bad at something give the most advice on things? It's like people that give me advice on parenting, like kids are often train wrecks. I'm like,
yeah, I think there's an awareness and a humility that comes when you actually start taking lumps in the field that you're talking about, and you learn to shut up a little bit more. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, what we're talking about, so we're going to go to your pastor role, because now you're worship pastor at Summit Church down in Fort Myers, Florida. And the pastor having an exemplary marriage, the pastor adoring their wife, it's crucial, because we're never going to really make traction in the marriage ministry space till we make traction in the pastor's marriage area, because you really can't share a vision you're not experiencing. And if it's not that important to you, such that you're giving it time and attention and thriving, and it's really hard to shepherd people to do something you're not doing. So, I guess I'd start with, why is it that a significant portion of pastors have dominated marriages that are not worthy of replication? When, if you look at 1 Timothy and Titus, the qualifications of the pastor, you would think, man, these are the rock stars as husbands that we should be following how they do it.
Oh man, that's a good question. I think we overvalue talent and undervalue presence. I've been thinking a lot about what makes somebody an authoritative, weighty presence when they're up in front of people. There's some people who just stand up and they're different when they read the Word of God or when they speak than others. And so as a guy who's developing worship leaders and pastors, it's become an important question to me. Like, how can I take this normal person who doesn't have weight and authority when they speak and help them to grow into somebody who is that person? And ultimately, it's about being authentic in who you are, and actually having power and presence in your life that you're speaking of, all those qualifications in Timothy and Titus. And a really big part of that, when we're standing up in front of God's people, is our family life. You can't fake that. You are lacking authority and power because you're not really those things when your home isn't in order, when you're standing in front of God's people. And a lot of people don't have the nose to sniff that out because you're talented as a speaker or you're winsome or charismatic, but it shows up eventually. The bill always comes due when you need to be real and to be a person of real authority in the church's life. It's going to show up and it's going to cost you something. I don't think anybody necessarily, or very few people, intend for that to happen. I think they just want to serve the church. They say yes to open doors. And a lot of times the doors that are open to them just come too quickly before their family life can catch up or they're being discipled or developed. Because, you measure what you care about, and the church just hasn't cared enough about the family. And there's no mechanisms to check in on marriages and health and family from the top down, elders down to our people. And so, we measure dollars and seats. We measure giving and missions. We measure how many students show up at, on Wednesday night. We're not measuring how many date nights that we're averaging as a congregation, and I know that sounds corny or hokey, but you get my point,
Oh, I like corny and hokey. You know me well.
I do.
But a shout out to Summit Church. Summit Church is a wonderful church in South Florida. They have made tremendous progress in the marriage ministry space. They've launched Reengage, which is a great ministry. They're launching Grace Marriage in the fall, and Brandon expects great participation at Grace Marriage. So they're going to have the intensive piece of Reengage, which is great, but it's not just going to be a one and done. They're going to have an ongoing discipleship pathway of Grace Marriage. So I hope I know Summit's an influential church, and my prayer is that Summit influences a lot of churches to do the same thing. So I guess the question I would have, most people listening to this podcast aren't pastors, okay? But most of them have pastors or church leaders around them, or people that are active in the church around them. How can they be part of the answer as it relates to pastor's marriage and not part of the problem? Like, how can they be that Bob Childers?
Bob was close to 70 years old,
mm-hmm.
and loved Josie in a way that was really special. How he looked at his wife and how he cared for his wife and honored her. He held himself. He talked really deep. He'd smoked his whole life, and he was a really hard man. Like, he was an electrician in the city. So
you saying he had a smoker's voice?
He did. He had a smoker's voice. But when he spoke or talked about or talked to Josie, there was a tenderness to him that was completely different. You could tell there was an honor there. I don't think you can get that very quickly. So unfortunately, the work ahead is not, it's not hard work in the sense, because it's a lot of fun and it's actually really winsome and enjoyable work to do. But there is a long game thing here. And I think you have to develop a real, authentic, healthy home to be able to be the kind of person who the world looks to for help. I think what's happened in mine and Tara's life, because we've been introduced to so many people who are like that we can look to as our North Star. Like, we want to be like these people that have spoken into our life. So it trickles down. In our case, we had the grace of running into people that showed us the way, that held us accountable, that loved us enough to speak into our life. So I recommend that if you can, find somebody who has a great marriage that you can ask for help, and then begin to walk the path. And if you have that kind of authentic, beautiful home, then begin to bring people into your house with no strings attached, just for dinner. I think we catch more than we are taught. I think we learn by being immersed in things. And so what I learned when we left Pleasant Valley 5 years ago, this Sunday is going to be our 5-year anniversary of moving to Florida, is you kind of get eulogized when you leave a place, when you've been there that long. It's almost like I attended my own funeral in some ways because of the sadness of leaving. The thing that I heard that mattered the most over and over and over and over, without exception, was you invited me to your home. You let me watch your family. I got to watch you parent your kids. I love the way that you and Tara loved each other. So I learned the value and the power of a home that is beautiful. And so we try to leverage that now.
And I know you were part. Now this is important because Brandon's one of the key leaders at our church when he was there, and he didn't just support marriage ministry; he was in it. I mean, how long were you in a Grace Marriage group when you were in Pleasant Valley?
How long?
How many years?
What was it, like 12 years?
Yeah, so Brandon showed up quarter after quarter, investing in his own marriage, and there's over 100 couples doing Grace Marriage at Pleasant Valley, and it's because our leadership invested in marriage. Because it's like, if you say, hey, you ought to be involved in our marriage ministry, but my marriage is not important enough for me to get in it myself, that stuff doesn't ring real good. I mean, it's like, hey, we have an amazing marriage ministry. We have everything else, and I'll be mulching on Saturday morning, but make sure you're there investing in your marriage. Or I'll be speaking somewhere, but I can't invest in my marriage. So as leaders of a church, you want to see people prioritize their marriage over other things. I can't speak that morning because I'm investing in my marriage. I can't go to that retreat because I'm investing in my marriage. I can't do the wedding that day because I'm investing in my marriage. Because like Tim Keller said, if anything comes ahead of your marriage other than Jesus, your marriage will slowly die. And when you let people pleasing and affirmation seeking take precedence over your marriage, I take that back. I would add an earnest desire to honor God and honor the church, but manifested in a way that's non-biblical. So,
yeah.
But,
and, we reproduce what we've experienced. And if your church is not adamantly banging the drum of the importance of the family in your marriage relationship, it's really easy to go that path, So you need champions. You need people who are speaking up. You need people who are holding you accountable to the biblical standard. My wife is from Eastern Kentucky. She's from Pineville, Kentucky, and she's a very personal, time-oriented person. That's her love language. And when she heard Brad Rhoads talking about how important it was for pastors to be with their wives, it wasn't hard for her to hold me accountable to that. Like Tara wasn't accepting anything less than what she knew she deserved as my wife. And it helps to have a wife who's, stubborn enough to help you along the way. Mine is.
Yeah. And so if your spouse and your marriage isn't what it ought to be, step forward and make a change. Just don't settle into some norm you can tolerate and do it is what it is type deal. So I guess in closing, before we close this episode up, marriage will not be more important in the home than it is in the church. And if the church doesn't put time and resources and effort into it, couples won't put time and resources and effort into it because the church is influential. So not having a marriage ministry isn't just this, it would be nice. No, it's kind of being a contributor to the downfall of marriage and divorce in single parent homes. So it's a much bigger deal you not having a marriage ministry than just say, it'd be a nice thing to have. No, the role of pastors is to shepherd and disciple and teach people, and just letting sheep go wherever and walking marriages walk off a cliff and say it's a sad thing. That's why I'm real thankful for Summit stepping forward. And I'm challenging everybody to listen to this podcast to be the persistent widow, be nice, but be the persistent widow that won't stop until marriage is a big deal in my church. So Brandon, thank you for being on the podcast. We'll have you back and we'll get into some nuts and bolts in marriage in the next episode.
Thanks so much, man. Glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us on the Grace Marriage Podcast. We really hope you're feeling inspired to take intentional steps to grow in your marriage.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. Your support helps us spread the message of grace and reach even more couples.
And if you have a moment, please leave us a review. Your feedback means a lot to us and helps others discover the podcast.
To learn more about how you can grow in your marriage, visit us at gracemarriage.com. Keep building stronger, grace-filled marriages.
We'll see you next week on the Grace Marriage Podcast. Until then, keep growing in grace.